The frontier keeps its secrets tucked deep in the dust, but every now and then, a tale rises from the wild that stops even the toughest cowhands in their tracks. Picture this: the sun barely climbing over the plains, a cold wind weaving through the pines, and a massive stone-gray stallion standing utterly still, listening. Moments later, that same giant horse would be found nudging at the limp body of a female ranger, hanging upside down from a broken tree limb. Most folks would have called it a miracle right then and there. But the truth? The truth was stranger, deeper, and far more haunting than any simple rescue. Because by the time the ranger opened her eyes and staggered back toward town, 3 tiny foals hiding in the shadows would reveal a secret the West had buried for far too long. And nothing in Thornbrush would ever feel the same again. If stories of courage, loyalty, and frontier mystery spark something in you, go ahead and hit like, tap subscribe, and share this tale with someone who loves a good Wild West mystery. It helps keep legends like this alive on WestTales A Down. Dawn drifted over the frontier with a slow, deliberate hush, as if the land itself was deciding whether to wake or stay dreaming. A pale blue light washed the frost-bitten prairie, catching on every blade of stiff grass, turning the valley into a sea of cold silver. The early wind carried the smell of pine sap and creek water. It was the kind of morning where the world felt paused, holding still, waiting for something to reveal itself. Elder Wind stood alone in that stillness. The giant stallion looked less like an animal and more like an ancient carving come to life. Broad shoulders, mist-gray coat, a mane tangled with dried prairie reeds from the night before. If legends could walk, they would walk like him. Most horses had a nervous flick to their ears, a predictable shift of weight, a restlessness born of instinct. But not Elder Wind. He listened, truly listened, like something in the earth whispered to him, and he understood every word. That morning, his head snapped up, a tremor in the air, a quiver riding the wind too faint for most creatures, but not for him. His ears rotated sharply toward the tree line that framed the ridge. His breath steamed in the cold, heavy and slow. Something was wrong, something human. He stepped through the frost with a sound like muted drums beating over buried stone. Each stride was powerful, deliberate, cutting a path toward the pines. He didn't hesitate, didn't stop, didn't question, as though he already knew where he was needed. The deeper he went, the colder the air turned, as if the shadowed forest carried its own weather. A thin noise rose between the branches, soft, strained, dangling somewhere between a groan and a whisper. Elder Wind froze. His massive chest expanded as he breathed in, searching out the source, and then he saw it. A figure dangling upside down from a snapped, crooked limb. Boots pointing to the sky. Hat fallen in the dirt below. Body limp, swaying with the faintest movement of the wind. Ranger Ara Boone. Tough-eyed, quiet-spoken, and stubborn enough to track outlaws across cliffs most men avoided. Everyone in Thornbrush knew her as the ranger who never bragged, never backed down, and never broke. But this morning, she looked small, pale. Her belt was twisted hard around the splintered branch, trapping her like a caught deer. Blood rushed to her head until her face turned a harsh shade of red under the morning light. Her eyelids fluttered, but barely. The memory of how she ended up there flickered through her mind in broken shards. The outlaw's smirk, his lazy whistle, the rope snare hidden beneath dead needles. A sudden snap, then the sky flipping, the ground turning into a blur, the terrible sting of the branch catching her belt mid-fall, laughter echoing off stone, footsteps fading into the woods, and then nothing. How, drifting toward consciousness, she heard something heavy breathing close to her. Warm, alive, she forced her eyes open a crack, vision swimming in dizziness. All she could see was a massive gray blur moving beside her, a muzzle, a dark eye staring at her with unshakable focus. Elder Wind nudged her shoulder gently. Ence, then again, steady, patient, refusing to leave. Easy. Easy, Ara whispered, though her words barely existed. She wasn't sure if she was calming him or trying to calm herself. Every breath felt like it rattled inside her. The horse shifted his weight and pressed his shoulder beneath her, bracing her body so she could reach up toward the branch. Her fingers were numb from blood rushing to her head, but she clawed weakly at the belt until the buckle gave way. She slipped, dropped, half rolled, half collapsed into Elder Wind's side before landing on the frozen ground in a hurt, tangled heap. The earth spun, the sky wobbled. She coughed, trying to force the dizziness out of her lungs. It took several minutes before she could even kneel. Hence she finally stood. She expected the stallion to leave. Wild horses didn't stick around after helping humans. Not here, not anywhere. But Elder Wind simply turned and walked beside her, matching her weak, uneven steps with slow, measured ones of his own, as though escorting her somewhere, as though claiming responsibility for her safety. By the time the two of them reached the dusty outskirts of Thornbrush, the morning still hadn't shaken off its chill. Smoke rose from chimneys. The first few townsfolk drifted outside, rubbing sleep from their eyes, ready to start another day of chores, gossip, and the slow grind of frontier living. And then they saw her, Ranger stumbling in, pale as morning clay, clothes torn, hair matted with pine needles, followed by the largest wild stallion anyone had ever seen. Whispers rose instantly, swirling around her like dust devils. Is that Boone? Looks like she got tossed by a tree. No. Heard she got caught in her own trap. Rangers shouldn't be out alone like that. Might have hung herself if you ask me. Ara kept walking, chin steel straight, even as shame stung like sand in her throat. The humiliation wasn't new. Thornbrush had a way of sinking its teeth into anyone who didn't fit its mold. And Ara Boone, with her quiet confidence and reputation for working alone, was an easy target for people who didn't like seeing a young ranger rise too fast. Lerwind noticed her tension and stepped closer, Holder brushing her arm. A silent reminder she wasn't alone. That simple gesture unexpected, firm, loyal shocked her more than the fall from the tree had.
She breathed once, steadying, but Thornbrush wasn't done with her yet. Sheriff Rowan Cutter stepped out from the office, arms crossed and voice soaked in mockery. Well now, looks like our ranger got herself caught like laundry on a windy day. Laughter rippled from porch loungers. Ara felt her hands twitch. She froze them still. Outlaw Jed Murdoch set a snare, she said flatly. Tracked him too close to the ridge. Cutter raised an eyebrow. Or maybe you walked into it because you ain't half as sharp as you think. He smirked. The crowd chuckled. And Ara Boone, who had nearly died less than an hour ago, stood there swallowing every insult like it was cold iron. But then something shifted. Elder Wind stepped forward, planting himself directly between Cutter and Ara, a wild horse, defending her. Silence rolled across the street, like a slow-gathering storm. Even Cutter stopped talking. For the first time, Ara saw something flicker across his face that wasn't mockery. It was uncertainty. Behind her humiliation, her spinning head, her aching ribs, a quiet realization pressed forward. This horse didn't just save her. He was protecting her. And out on the prairie, animals didn't do that. Not without a reason. Thornbrush was the kind of town where stories travel faster than horses, and truths arrived limping behind them, usually too late to matter. By the time Ranger Ara Boone reached the center of town with Elder Wind towering beside her, the tale of her upside-down misadventure had already spread to every porch, saloon booth, and open window. Folks leaned out with curious eyes, whispering like wind through dry corn. Some stared at her with pity, others with thinly veiled mockery. All of them watched the giant horse with a measure of awe. It had been years since Thornbrush had seen a wild stallion like Elder Wind so close to town without kicking up dust and vanishing. Horses like him didn't follow people. They didn't trail behind rangers like loyal hounds. They didn't nudge injured women towards safety with a tenderness that felt almost human. Yet here he was, shadowing Ara Boone like he'd chosen her. The town was not prepared for that sight, nor for what it meant. Ara felt their eyes on her as she headed toward the sheriff's office. Her jaw tightened. The dizziness from hanging upside down had settled behind her eyes like an ache she couldn't shake. Each step felt heavier than the last. Elder Wynn stayed glued at her side, walking with silent authority that forced people to part as if he were royalty stepping through a crowd. Sheriff Rowan Cutter waited near the hitching posts, arms crossed, posture sharp like a blade meant to cut down confidence. He wore authority like a costume, loud, bright, and poorly fitted. Well, Cutter called out, voice loud enough for gossip to grab hold of. Ranger Boone returns from her grand adventure. His lip curled. Didn't expect to see you upright quite so soon. Ara's back stiffened. Jed Murdoch set a trap. I was tracking him near the ridge. Cutter smirked. And got yourself caught like a fish in a snare. He leaned forward. That outlaw didn't drag you up there. You walked right into it. Reckless. Careless. Real rangers know better. The gathered crowd buzzed with murmurs. Ara kept her hands still at her sides. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing them shake. A low rumble vibrated the ground. Elder Wynn stepped in front of her. Every porch creaked as people leaned back. A few froze mid-sentence. The stallion's towering form cast Cutter in shadow. His ears pinned slightly back. Not hostile, just warning. Cutter swallowed. For a heartbeat, he looked almost embarrassed. But pride returned quickly. Pride always returned for men like him. He stepped sideways to maintain distance. You should keep that beast under control, he snapped. Ara didn't answer. She didn't have to. Elder Wynn's presence said more than she ever could. The tension shattered when a new voice sliced through the murmurs, low, steady, and carrying weight that quieted even the dust in the street. Ara. Marshal Cyrus Hale strode forward from behind the general store. Dark coat, brushing his boots. Hat tilted low against the morning glare. He had a certain way about him. Not dramatic, not flashy, just a calm that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. His eyes landed on her bruised face, the scrapes on her arms, the dry dirt on her sleeves. His expression didn't shift, but something like concern flickered behind his storm-gray gaze. What happened? He asked softly. Ara opened her mouth, but Cutter cut her off. She's telling people Murdoch snared her, probably tripped over her own feet, and is too embarrassed to admit it. The marshal turned to Cutter, slowly, calmly, with that look a winter storm gives to a flimsy wooden fence. You're talking, Cyrus said, when you should be listening. Cutter's jaw tightened. Marshal with respect. Respect, Cyrus interrupted, requires truth, and this woman nearly died. Silence. Cutter's face went stiff. Cyrus stepped closer to Ara, lowering his voice. You all right? A simple question. Gentle. Real. Ara exhaled slowly. I will be. For the first time that morning, she felt seen, not judged, not dismissed, not ridiculed. Seen. Cyrus nodded once. Come on. Let's walk. They moved away from the crowd. Elder Wynn followed without hesitation, his massive hooves thudding a soft rhythm behind them. They walked until the noise of Thornbrush shrank into a distant murmur. When they reached the river bank, Ara stopped and finally let out the breath she'd been holding since dawn. Cyrus watched her a moment before asking, Tell me exactly what happened. She did. Every detail. The canyon, the hidden trap, Murdoch's grin, hanging helpless while the world spun. Elder Wynn's rescue. The long walk back into humiliation. Cyrus didn't interrupt, didn't question, didn't doubt. He simply listened with a stillness that felt warmer than the morning sun. When she finished, his jaw clenched. He meant to kill you. Ara stared at the river. I know. You should have backup on cases like this. I can handle Murdoch, she said. I've tracked worse. Handling him, Cyrus replied gently, doesn't mean doing it alone. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding, or something older than both. Cyrus looked at Elder Wynn. This horse chose you. Ara shrugged faintly. Horses don't choose people. They do, Cyrus replied. Just not often, and never without reason. Ara considered that. She wanted to argue, but Elder Wind stood so close she could feel his warmth. His presence felt intentional, purposeful, protective. Maybe the Marshal was right. She shifted slightly, touching the stallion's shoulder. He didn't move away. I don't know why he helped me, she whispered. Cyrus tilted his head. Maybe he wasn't helping you. Ara frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But before he could answer, Elder Wind's ear flicked sharply toward the tree line. His eyes narrowed, muscles tightened. Something stirred in the shadows. Cyrus's hand drifted instinctively toward the revolver at his hip. You hear that? Ara nodded. Something's out there. They waited, still silent. For a moment, the wind carried no sound but the soft slap of water against the riverbank. Then a thin, distant noise floated through the pines. A high, almost trembling sound. Not a threat, not a predator. Something smaller, something frightened. Ara stepped forward, but Elder Wind moved first, blocking her gently with his massive frame, then walking toward the sound with purpose. Cyrus watched him carefully. He knows something. Ara followed. He saved me this morning. If he's leading now, I'm not ignoring it. They moved into the trees, following the stallion deeper into the shade. The forest thickened. The light dimmed. And then, tucked between two fallen logs, they found them. 3 tiny foals, barely able to stand, shaking, huddled together in a nest of pine needles. Ara froze. Cyrus whispered, So that's the reason. Elder Wind stepped toward the foals with a deep, aching softness that no one expected from a creature so massive. Ara stared at the newborns, her heartbeat stumbling. These weren't just orphans. They were Elder Wind's young. And suddenly the morning's rescue made far more sense. He hadn't just saved her. He had brought her back because he needed help. And this was only the beginning of why. The forest felt different after finding the foals. Quieter, heavier, as if the pines themselves understood the weight of what had just been uncovered. Ara Boone knelt slowly beside the 3 trembling newborns, her breath catching in her throat. They were impossibly small compared to Elder Wind, each one no bigger than a medium-sized dog. Their coats were still damp in places, slick with the last remnants of birth. One was pale like moonlit dust. One was a deep, rich chestnut. The third was mottled like storm clouds. All 3 stared up at her with wide, frightened eyes. Easy, Ara murmured. We're not here to hurt you. Elder Wind lowered his head, nudging each foal in turn, insisting they recognize safety. His massive body curved around them like a natural fortress, a barrier no predator would dare test. A horse that size could have crushed anything that threatened his young, but instead, he looked to Ara. It wasn't a gesture of authority. It was trust. Cyrus Hale stepped back a few paces, giving the ranger space. He brought you here, he said quietly. Not me, not anyone else. Ara's hand hovered over the smallest foal before gently brushing its damp forehead. It relaxed almost instantly beneath her touch. These 3, he hid them, protected them. She paused. He must have stopped here last night, maybe while I was unconscious. Or maybe, Cyrus added, he sensed Murdoch coming for you and had to split his attention. Ara's chest tightened. The outlaw's laugh echoed in her memories, sharp and cruel. He didn't just stumble upon me by chance. No, Cyrus studied the stallion. He knew, somehow. Before Ara could respond, Elder Wind lifted his head sharply. His ears twitched forward. His muscles coiled. Danger. Cyrus's hand shifted to his revolver. Something's coming. Ara rose slowly, careful not to startle foals. Not wolves. Wolves don't move like that. She scanned the shadows. 2-legged, quiet, watching us. The forest held its breath. Then a faint whistle drifted through the trees. High, mocking, familiar. Ara's stomach dropped. Murdoch. Cyrus cursed under his breath. He found us faster than I expected. The whistle echoed again, closer this time. Elder Wind stamped the ground fiercely, snorting a warning that vibrated through the soil. The foals huddled beneath his chest, knees trembling. Ara positioned herself beside the stallion, revolver drawn, breath steadying despite the tension crawling up her spine. "Stay low," Cyrus whispered. "He wants you alone. That's his game." Ara nodded. "He won't get it." A twig cracked. Both her and Cyrus turned toward the sound. Minutes passed. The forest remained still. Then, "Evening, Ranger," a voice drawled from between the pines. Footsteps lingered just out of sight. "You really ought to stop wandering the wilderness like a lost calf. Makes my work too easy." Ara's pulse thudded painfully against her ribs. "Show yourself, Murdoch." "Oh, I will," he said. "Just want to savor the moment first." His silhouette emerged slowly. Black hat, long coat, rifle slung casually over one shoulder. He leaned against a spruce tree as though he were warming himself by a fire rather than stalking them. "You survived the hanging," he noted with a crooked smirk. "Shame. Thought nature might finish the job for me." Cyrus stepped forward. "Put the gun down." Murdoch chuckled. "Marshal hail. Didn't expect you tagging along today." He tilted his head. "The Ranger need a babysitter now?" Ara's fingers tightened around her revolver. "What do you want?" "A do-over." His eyes glinted with cold malice. "Last time was sloppy. You didn't die. We can't have that." Cyrus moved to stand between them, but Murdoch raised his rifle faster than either expected. "Don't," the outlaw warned. "Wouldn't want lead in your spine, Marshal." Ara shifted her stance, and Murdoch noticed. His grin widened. "Ah, you still think you can take me? You could barely free yourself from a tree." Elder Wind let out a sharp, rumbling scream. The foals huddled tighter. Murdoch blinked in surprise. "Well, hell, didn't realize you adopted yourself a horse family." He lifted his rifle slightly. "One big one, 3 snack-sized ones. You really do live dangerously." Ara's blood ran cold. "Don't you touch them." "Oh, I won't." He winked. "Not unless you give me a reason." Cyrus's voice dropped. "Murdoch, don't be stupid." The outlaw shrugged. "Too late." He stepped forward and aimed directly at Ara. Everything happened in a single explosive moment. Elder Wind lunged with a sound like thunder. Murdoch fired wildly, missing Ara by inches as the stallion's hooves crashed down on roots, rocks, anything to throw between her and danger. Cyrus dove sideways, rolling behind a fallen log and drawing his revolver. Murdoch stumbled back, snarling. "Damn animal." Ara fired once, not to kill, but to force him into the open. The bullet struck the bark behind him, sending splinters flying. Murdoch ducked behind a spruce, firing 2 shots in return. Sparks burst off a nearby boulder. The foals squeaked and pressed deeper beneath their father. Cyrus shouted, "Get him away from the young." Ara sprinted sideways, drawing Murdoch's attention. He fired at her again, but Elder Wind shoved her aside with his massive shoulder, taking the brunt of the ricochet off his thick hide. He reared up, hooves striking the air in a furious arc. Murdoch cursed. "You're kidding me. The beast is fighting for you." Ara steadied her breath. "He's stronger than you'll ever be." She fired again. This time, the shot forced Murdoch out of cover, stumbling toward the trees in frantic retreat. Cyrus fired once, hitting the outlaw's hand and sending his rifle skidding across the forest floor. Murdoch screamed, clutching his bleeding knuckles. Elder Wind charged. The outlaw barely escaped being crushed beneath hooves the size of dinner plates. He scrambled backward, desperately clawing at dirt and leaves, shouting like a cornered coyote. Ara grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against a thick tree trunk. "You won't hang me again," she hissed, breath trembling with adrenaline. Cyrus arrived seconds later, gun leveled. "It's over, Murdoch." The outlaw glared at them both, chest heaving, fury twisting his face. "You think this changes anything? That town still thinks she's a joke. They'll never believe a ranger worth her badge needs a horse to save her." Ara stepped closer. "They'll believe what I show them. And today I showed I don't back down." Cyrus slapped irons onto Murdoch's wrists. "You're done. Try anything else, and Elder Wind here will be your judge, jury, and executioner." The stallion snorted as if in agreement. Murdoch shut his mouth completely as Cyrus dragged him away. Ara knelt beside the foals again. Elder Wind lowered his head until it rested near her shoulder. "You saved them," she whispered, "and you saved me." The stallion breathed warm and slow beside her, an entire world of trust in that single exhale. Cyrus returned a moment later, tucking his revolver away. "We need to get these little ones somewhere safe." Ara glanced at the foals, then back at Elder Wind, then at the Marshal. "I know a place." Cyrus nodded. "Then let's move. Night's coming." As the shadows deepened and the wind grew colder, the unlikely group, Ranger, Marshal, Giant Stallion, and 3 trembling foals, made their way out of the forest. Behind them, the dark ridge loomed. Ahead of them waited a town that had no idea its stories were about to change forever. The winter sun dipped low behind Thornbrush's rooftops as Ara Boone, Cyrus Hale, Elder Wind, and the 3 newborn foals emerged from the forest's dark edge. The town's muddy streets shimmered with the last streaks of pale gold, but the air carried a heavy hush of something unspoken, as if every window and doorway held its breath at their return. Murdoch, wrists bound, limped between Cyrus and the shove of justice he couldn't escape. Dust clung to his clothes like failure. His earlier arrogance had drained out of him, replaced by the cold dread of a man who realized too late his legend wouldn't end with victory, but with a jail cell. Ara walked a few steps behind, Elder Wind at her side. The foals wobbled close to her boots, their tiny legs trembling in the open world. The townsfolk began to gather as the group crossed the main street. Whispers rose, scattered like ashes in a breeze. "She's back." With Murdoch captured? Those young horses, where in blazes did they come from? That big stallion, never seen anything like him. The crowd's curiosity pulsed thick as humidity. Their judgment weighed just as heavy. Sheriff Cutter pushed his way to the front. Puffing himself up with a false sense of authority, he wore like a coat 2 sizes too large. When he saw Murdoch in irons, his eyebrows shot up. But when he saw Ara, really saw her dust-streaked, steady, unbroken, and Elder Wind standing guard behind her like a living wall, his jaw tightened in something painfully close to embarrassment. "You already caught Murdoch?" Cutter asked Cyrus, as if hoping the Marshal would give Ara no credit. "She did most of the work," Cyrus answered plainly. The crowd rustled. Cutter's face darkened. Murdoch spat blood at the sheriff's boots. If she didn't have that demon horse on her side, Boone would have died twice today. Elder Wind stepped forward, not aggressive, simply imposing, towering enough to silence Murdoch's insults like a curtain falling on an unwanted performance. Ara spoke before anyone else could. "I didn't survive because of luck. I survived because I knew what I was facing, and I didn't run from it." "And the horse," someone in the crowd called. Ara's voice softened. "He wasn't saving me. He was protecting his young." She stepped aside, revealing the 3 tiny foals pressed against Elder Wind's legs. Gasps spread through Thornbrush. No one had ever seen a wild stallion defend young so fiercely, much less allow a human near them. Maeve Dullen, the saloon owner, stepped forward, wiping flour from her hands. Her eyes softened. Those babies wouldn't have lasted an hour alone out there. Ara nodded. "Murdoch would have killed them as easily as he tried to kill me." The outlaw sneered. "They're just animals." Cyrus's voice dropped like a hammer. "So is a rattlesnake, but we still respect what it can do." Cutter cleared his throat, trying to salvage authority. "What matters is Murdoch will stand trial." Boone, well, he hesitated, eyes darting between Ara and the massive horse at her back. "Maybe I judged too quickly." Ara didn't answer, not out of rudeness, out of necessity. Some apologies weren't worth the air used to speak them. Instead, she turned to Cyrus. "We need to get the foal shelter. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe." Cyrus nodded. "My barn's empty. Strong walls. Fresh hay. No one will bother them there." Elder Wind seemed to approve, nudging Ara gently as if urging her forward. They walked together toward the outskirts of town. Every step stirred dust and rumor behind them, but Ara didn't look back. Not once. Inside Cyrus's barn, warm lantern light filled the space. Ara spread blankets near a trough, while Cyrus laid down clean bedding. Elder Wind guided the foals inside, each step careful, deliberate. He positioned himself at the barn door, ready to defend if needed. For a moment, all four, Ara, Cyrus, Elder Wind, the foals, simply existed in a quiet, steady warmth. Cyrus exhaled. "You were extraordinary today." Ara shook her head. "I was terrified." "That's not the same thing," he said. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something matters more." His words, simple as they were, landed deep. Ara lowered herself beside the smallest foal, brushing its soft forehead. "They matter," she whispered, "not just because they're his, but because they didn't choose to come into this world without protection." Cyrus leaned against a support beam, crossing his arms. "Neither did you." Ara looked up sharply. Cyrus's voice softened. "People think strength always needs to be loud, that silence is weakness. But you've carried this town's judgments for years without letting them break you." Ara glanced away, overwhelmed. "Why are you saying all this?" "Because someone should have," he replied. For the first time in a long time, Ara felt her defenses falter, not collapse, just loosen. A faint rustle broke the moment. One of the foals stumbled, nearly falling. Ara reached out quickly, steadying it. Elder Wind lowered his head, pressing his nose gently against her shoulder, a gesture of gratitude. Cyrus watched the interaction with quiet awe. "He trusts you," he said, "and that stallion isn't one to trust easily." Ara swallowed a rising emotion. "I didn't do anything special." "You did," Cyrus murmured. "You listened. That's rare." The barn settled into a comfortable stillness. Outside, night crept across the plains. The wind brushed against the wooden beams like someone whispering secrets only the dark could carry. Then a soft knock sounded at the barn door. Cyrus stood. "If it's Cutter again, I swear." But it wasn't Cutter. It was Lark, the small orphan girl who often slept behind the saloon. Her eyes were wide but bright. "Ranger Boone," she whispered. Ara knelt to her level. "What is it, Lark?" "I told the others what I saw." The girl said quietly, "I told them Murdoch tried to hurt you last night, and that you weren't lying." Ara's breath caught. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Lark replied. "People say a lot of things, but I know what's true." Ara reached forward, gently tucking a strand of hair behind Lark's ear. "Thank you." The girl grinned, then darted off into the night. Cyrus looked over at Ara. "People are starting to see you for who you are." "Maybe," Ara whispered. "But even if they don't, I know who I am now." She rose, brushing hay from her pants. The foals curled together in a warm pile. Elder Wind lowered himself beside them, folding his giant body into the bedding like a living fortress. Ara and Cyrus stood a few feet apart, both quiet, both wrapped in the soft glow of lantern light. He stepped closer. She didn't retreat. "You know," Cyrus said softly, "you don't have to carry everything alone." Ara looked up, meet his eyes fully. "I'm starting to believe that." He touched her cheek, gentle, reverent, not claiming her, simply being present, offering a steadiness that felt stronger than any weapon she'd ever carried. She leaned into the touch, just slightly. "Stay a while," she whispered. "I already planned to," he replied. They stood together, breathing in the warmth of the barn, the safety of the moment, the quiet promise of something neither needed to label. Outside, Elder Wind lifted his head, watching them, not intruding, simply witnessing. A guardian, a survivor, a legend. And as the lantern flame flickered and the foals pressed closer to their father, Thornbrush shifted in ways its people wouldn't understand for years. A ranger regained her worth. A town learned to see truth over gossip. A horse protected more than his own blood. And a new story rooted itself deep in the frontier, one that would be told for generations on WestTales A Down. A story of courage, loyalty, and the quiet strength that rises when the world tries to hang you upside down. The kind of tale only the Wild West could write.